Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar on preparation to deliver the new Level 3 qualifications. We're going to get started pretty promptly, so we'll move on, and I'll do a round of introductions and introduce you to the presentation team today. Thank you, everybody, for attending. We hope you find the webinar useful. If you do have any questions, please feel free to populate those in the questions tab, and we will certainly try our best to cover those towards the end of the webinar or during the webinar. Apologies as well. I am suffering from hay fever, hence the tone of my voice, so apologies for that. My colleague is also suffering as well, so we do apologise for the deepness and the raspiness of our voices when we're presenting. It's just unfortunate that there's a pollen bomb currently in England and Wales, actually, so yeah, apologies for that. Hopefully you can still hear me okay, and that it doesn't impact on the webinar too much. Just by way of introductions, my name is Jason Howe. I'm a technical advisor at City and Guilds for Construction, and from February this year I've been supporting centres in Wales with my colleagues Ian Roberts and David Pye, who are technical advisors, Ian for Construction and David for BSc. And usually at those events we're also joined by our colleague Angharad Lloyd-Bynion, who is the Policy and Stakeholder and Partnership Manager at City and Guilds across our nations, obviously including Wales. Unfortunately, neither David, Angharad or Ian are able to join us today, but I'm grateful and thankful that my colleague Salim Vizran is able to join and support with presenting on today's webinar, and I'll introduce Salim shortly. Just by aware of what we're going to cover today, so done the welcome and the introductions essentially. We're going to go through an 8-step guide in preparation to deliver the Level 3. It's just a guide that we've set out that hopefully sequences a range of topics that you could be or should be focusing on in preparation to deliver the Level 3 qualifications in September. So we'll go through them step by step. So Salim and I will alternate the presentation. And again, if you do have any questions, please feel free to put those in the questions tab. I'll introduce Salim now. Salim is our lead industry manager and also an industry manager for building services, and has been working within the construction and BSc team on the Qualification Wales Skills for Wales project at City and Guilds. So welcome, Salim. Thank you very much for presenting, and I'll now hand over to yourself.
Thank you, Jason, and welcome and good morning to you all on this lovely sunny day. So next slide, please, Jason. So yeah, so I'm going to just talk you through some of the resources that we've produced for these new qualifications. Just to reiterate, all of these resources, we'd like you to signpost them to our Skills for Wales website. So all of these products, as we go through the slide deck, can be found on the Skills for Wales website. So if you are able to go on there at some point today, just to look over the slides that we have been speaking to you about, you'll find all of the information on there. It's quite easy to navigate on there as well. So if you haven't, please, I would encourage you all to go on there, because I guess a lot of time and effort has gone into creating some of these resources for yourselves, and these will obviously aid the delivery of these new qualifications as well. Next slide, please. So one of the pieces of resources that we produced is the editable spreadsheet around the delivery planner. So this is almost a high-level kind of image that we've got on this slide, just around how tutors and other assessors can actually look at delivering these Level 3 qualifications in a spreadsheet that you're able to easily kind of break down into the different terms. So as you go through the academic year, you're able to put the types of schemes of work in. These are easily printable as well. So the way they've been created also gives the tutors and the assessors the actual visibility, so they can actually show that to their learners as well. There is a blank planner available also for providers. So again, these can be found on the Skills for Wales website. And again, just to say that these are editable as well. We've also, as you probably know from previous presentations, we've been working very closely with Hodder Education. So Hodder Education are our partner in terms of our publication materials. So we produce publication materials for building services engineering, as well as on-site construction. So Hodder will be publishing 3 mapping documents to demonstrate how Hodder Education's existing publishing can be used to deliver specific trade elements. So for on-site, for plumbing, and for some of the other trades as well. And these materials have, again, you know, a lot of work has gone into these materials, and these materials can be purchased through Hodder Education. I also believe there will be a link on our Skills for Wales website as well. So if you go to our Skills for Wales website, you should be able to see a widget there where it will take you straight through. And if you haven't seen any of these sample materials, or you would like to see some of these sample materials, please email Thomas directly on the email address on this particular slide, because like I said, a lot of these materials are really, really good. So it'd be worthwhile just having a look at those as well. Next slide, please, Jason. Thank you. Yeah, so again, you know, the types of support materials we've got up on the Skills for Wales website, you know, they are pretty much generic. You would have been familiar with these as well. It is the assessment pack, the qualification handbook, as well as the employer confirmation guide. And these snips are just for solid plastering, for instance. So you can see the assessment pack snips and the qualification handbook, as well as the employer confirmation guide. And again, these can be found on the Skills for Wales website. And again, this is just a little bit more around the delivery planner that we spoke about. So again, this just gives you a little bit more detail in terms of, you know, the work that's gone into this. Obviously, the feedback that we've had from yourselves, and obviously some of our channel partners have helped shape what these delivery planners actually look like from the feedback that we've had from yourself. And as a result of that feedback, you know, we've produced basically what you've asked for as well. So it's quite self-explanatory. I think the next slide goes into a little bit more detail. Yeah, so this is what a delivery planner would look like around health and safety, for instance, and some of the other aspects within that, and what that would look like. So you know, again, this has been from the feedback that we've received from yourselves, and we've obviously taken that and put that into these editable delivery planning spreadsheets. Yeah, again, and this just is the, I think this was again something around basic joints, health and safety, and how a delivery planning editable spreadsheet would look like. And now I'm going to pass back over to you, Jason.
That's great. Thank you very much, Salim. So yeah, as Salim mentioned, all of the resources and support material is on our Skills for Wales website. So do please pay a visit and access all of the materials that's on there. With regards to step 3, obviously we're going to look at the methods of the assessments. And for this, we are looking at the core, because obviously as part of the apprenticeship framework, learners will need to undertake the core qualification if they haven't already completed the foundation qualifications. So we just need to cover all bases on this. So apologies if I'm repeating what you may already know, but it's imperative that we cover it so that the entire audience has a full understanding. So with regards to the core, we have the on-screen assessment, which is externally set and marked, which is the multi-choice question paper. Then we have the practical project, which is externally set but internally marked by yourselves, and then it's externally verified and quality assured by us as an awarding organisation. And then you have the guided discussion as part of the core, not to be confused with a professional discussion, because they are different. You have the guided discussion, which is externally set and externally marked, and also goes through external quality assurance. And guidance for that is all on the Skills for Wales website. Either you can find it under the foundation qualification or within the core qualification. And learners, just to reiterate, the learners must have completed the practical project prior to undertaking the discussion, because obviously the work that you've undertaken as part of the project will lend itself to structuring and forming part of the guided discussion. So that covers the core. Moving on to the level 3. So within the level 3, there are 2 on-screen assessments, which is test 1 and test 2, and these are externally set and marked by us as the awarding organisation. And then you have the practical project. This is done in the workplace. This is internally set by yourselves and internally marked, but then it goes through external quality assurance by ourselves. Apologies, yeah. And then you have the professional discussion, again, different to the guided discussion, where this is externally set and externally marked and externally quality assured. And this is conducted by ourselves, and we will provide competence-based assessors to conduct these professional discussions, and they will be trade-specific as well. The employee confirmation must have been completed prior to the commencement of the professional discussion, so before the final assessment. Apologies. Apologies for that. And learners must have completed the practical project assessment prior to undertaking the professional discussion, because, as mentioned previously, it will form the part of the professional discussion. So it is imperative that it is sequenced in that manner. So looking at the methods of assessment in a bit more detail. So you've got the employee confirmation, or the employee confirmation guide, and this provides the guidance to the employers and you guys as training providers on the occupational competency statements and how they've been met. This ensures that learners are consistently working above the industry requirement, or at or above, and all mandatory sections of the employee confirmation guide must be completed. And that must be complete, again, prior to booking the professional discussion. The employee confirmation guide is also used to support the learner when they are applying for their relevant competency card as well. Then you have the overall qualification result. So for this, the overall qualification is graded either pass, merit or distinction, and provisional grades for the practical project will undergo internal and external quality assurance, and the professional discussion will go through an external assessor, as I mentioned previously, and will confirm a grade. But the grades are all provisional, and the final grade will be issued by City and Guilds. If, unfortunately, if a learner does fail to successfully achieve a pass in any one of the assessments, they can resit or resubmit. If a learner is required to do either of those, through appropriate feedback and support, this must be provided to the learner so that they can develop in areas where they need to in order to undertake the assessment again. Guidance on any resits and resubmissions can be found on the assessment packs on the Skills for Wales website. Just looking at the assessment rules, so this is just a couple of scenarios we're providing for you now. So when a learner moves on to the apprenticeship and the level 3 as a direct entry, so they haven't previously done the foundation, they've come straight in as an entry learner onto the apprenticeship. Essentially, they've got 3 externally set and externally marked multi-choice tests, 1 for the core and 2 for the level 3. They will also have 1 externally set and internally marked project for the core, 1 internally marked guided discussion for the core, 1 employer set internally assessed project covering their chosen trade, and that will be for the level 3, and 1 externally marked professional discussion, again for the level 3. Scenario B. So we just wanted to showcase where if a learner has done the foundation, for example, what the learner would need to complete to be successful after the end of a level 3. So they will complete 2 externally set and externally marked multi-choice tests, and they will be the ones contained within the level 3. And they will complete 1 employee set internally assessed project covering their chosen trade area, and finally they would complete 1 externally marked and conducted professional discussion, and a learner is exempt from the core qualification and all core qualification assessments if they have successfully completed the foundation. Scenario C. So this looks at a learner that may have completed the foundation and progression qualifications and then advances onto a level 3, and hopefully we'll have learners that successfully do that. So what a learner would need to do then is only 1 externally set, externally marked multi-choice test, and that will be test 2, because by successfully completing the progression they are exempt from test 1. They would do the project, which is employee set and internally assessed, and they would do the externally marked and delivered professional discussion as well. So that covers the essentially 3 scenarios. Hopefully that's been helpful in just showcasing what a learner would need to do. The learner is exempt from the core, as I mentioned, and test 1 of the level 3 multi-choice test, obviously if they have previously completed the progression qualification. Moving on to step 4. So we're just looking at some roles and responsibilities now. I'm not going to sort of read everything out from the slide. That would be silly. So you will get this slide deck, plus also a link to a survey. We'd be very grateful if you are able to complete that, and you will get this presentation as well, so you're able to revisit it and cover it in more detail if you wish. So we just wanted to showcase and highlight some of the roles and responsibilities, because it is a new type of assessment, essentially a new qualification. As much as pardon, the trades don't change, the way it is essentially delivered and assessed may do. So we've just bullet pointed on there half a dozen to 7 responsibilities of a learner. So you can cover these with learners when they are starting their apprenticeships, whether they come direct entry or whether they come from the progression and ultimately successfully get an apprenticeship. So those are the ones for the learner. Again, I'm not going to go through them in detail. You can all cover them yourself. Plus, I'm trying to limit the use of my voice at the minute, which is not great for a webinar. I understand that, but appreciating those are the roles and responsibility for the learner. So looking at the employer again, if you're working with your employees, and we have delivered some webinars as well to employers. This is just again another list of half a dozen to 7 or 8 responsibilities that the employer now has as part of this process, because they are a lot more involved in the apprenticeships now, which is always a good thing as well. So again, feel free to share this with any employers that you are working with. The last one is essentially the responsibility of the providers. And again, this is just covering a few points that may be useful to you, that when you are planning and obviously when you are now delivering your level 3 qualifications from September. Again, I don't want to go into too much detail on these, because you will get this slide deck and you can revisit it at your leisure. And we just wanted to showcase and touch on internal quality assurance, because it is important. It does have to continue, albeit it's a new form of assessment and qualification. It is imperative that internal quality assurance is conducted still. So what we've done on the screen there is just highlight and pick out a few bullet points for you guys as centres, as providers, as prompts really with regards to your quality assurance, and also for you to sort of consider when adapting your current assessment and IQA practices to the new level 3 qualification. And also think about the changes to assessments, risk rating of the new qualifications, and your current strategy and approaches that you have now, because you will just need to adapt those when working on these new ones and working with your EQA. As a little prompt, if you've been on our CPD events that we were doing earlier this year, This won't be unfamiliar to you because, you know, these were pointers that we were focusing on in the foundational progression qualifications as well. And it's similarly the same again. So this isn't a test or anything like that. It's just a personal checklist for you guys as centres to consider when you are starting to conduct and plan your internal quality assurance. So again, you will get this presentation. You can cut and paste that off if you want to sort of point score yourself. Could be used for standardization and preparation for your internal quality assurance from September. So hopefully those steps have been useful to you with regards to the assessments, the roles and responsibilities, and ultimately the IQA. I am now going to hand you back to Salim, give my voice a little rest for a little bit, who will take you through the next set of slides. Thank you, Salim.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, and just so we're just going to take you through the step 6 of the next few slides, particularly focusing around employer engagement and how this new qualification at level 3 differs in around how employers are going to be engaging with yourselves to take these learners through throughout the duration of this level 3 product throughout the end of it as well. So I guess what we first need to reiterate is, this again is on the Skills for Wales website. So again, all the documents that we've spoken around, handbooks, assessments, the assessment guidance, but more so the employer confirmation guide, all of this can be found on the Skills for Wales website. So again, there are a number of areas where employers need to be engaging within this new product to make sure they're able to support the apprentice throughout their journeys. So it's about providing opportunities for the apprentice to ensure that they carry out activities that outlines the occupational competency statements, which is set by the industry. So those industry stakeholders that have almost created these products alongside ourselves and are being delivered throughout our channel partners as well. It's about meeting training providers to review and record the apprentice's progress throughout their apprenticeship, as well as supporting the apprentice in gathering evidence to confirm, I guess, their proficiency and the activities that they've carried out. And we'll show you some examples of these over the next couple of slides as well. It's also about supporting the apprentice in compiling that kind of that portfolio of evidence as well, just to make sure that all of the products and all of the evidence that they have gathered meets those occupational requirements as well. Next slide, please, Jason. So again, this is almost like an illustration of the 8 steps that that the expectation is around helping employers to gather all of that evidence. So I'm not going to go through each and every single one of these, but again, this can be found on the Skills for Wales website in terms of how you can periodically go through each step to make sure that the employer is carrying out the right level of evidence for these level 3 qualifications. So again, I would encourage you all to have a look at that and go through that 8-step with them and talk to those employers just to make sure that they're actually comfortable in this whole process as well. We've certainly gone through this process with them when colleagues have done the employer webinars and have recently done the employer face-to-face networks as well. We've had some feedback, some positive feedback around their involvement and their roles and responsibilities within these particular qualifications as well. And these are just some of the examples that we spoke about just now around what an apprentice diary would actually look like. So, you know, there are some videos here, there are some photographs here, and it just kind of gives you a little bit of flavor on what that diary could and should look like. So, you know, there's a date, there's an address, obviously there's a task there in terms of plastering a lounge in a new build, and there is some narrative there in terms of how that task was basically carried out and stuff. So these are some good examples of the types of evidence and the types of jobs that we would be looking for in terms of work being carried out. And this is basically our plan for FY23. So September 2022 all the way through to August 2023, basically. So this gives you a bit of a flavor in terms of, you know, the planned activities that we've got coming up over the course of the next few months from September onwards. So there's kit webinars, you've got virtual centres, you've got dedicated level 3 webinars, you've got face-to-face surgeries, you've got live CPD sessions. So you've got a lot of Jason's time, and Ian's time, and Angharid's time going forward over the course of the next few months. You've also got obviously their email addresses, you've got the Skills for Wales website, so you can communicate with the whole team over the course of the next few months around you know, all of these kind of products that are going to be rolled out over the course of the next few months, and the support that both City and Guilds and EAL will be able to offer you around these new products, basically. So yeah, again, this planner will be available on the Skills for Wales website as well. And this is around continuous professional development, you know, with regards to maintaining currency of your own qualifications as you start delivering these qualifications, these new suite of qualifications come September. So, you know, it's around assessor and IQA qualifications, trade-specific qualifications, and heritage updates. So Skills for Wales updates can be done through an organisation called TUI, I believe through Nell Hellier. And again, more updates around this can be found, I believe, on our Skills for Wales website. And if it's not there at the moment, I believe it will be updated fairly soon as well. I think I'm going to hand you back over to Jason now, but I would also just encourage you to keep putting your questions through in the question tab as well. And Jason and myself will be able to look at those questions at the end and obviously come back to you on those as well.
Thank you very much, Salim. Yeah, just to cover one question quite quickly. There was a typo on the screen, and I actually presented it incorrectly as well. So the guided discussion for the court is internally marked, similarly in line with the foundation as well, but it is externally quality assured. So I just wanted to clear that up. The professional discussion, which is part of level 3, that is externally marked and conducted by an external assessor. So apologies for that confusion. Yeah, so moving on, just to look at sort of step 8, so coming towards the end of the 8-step guide that we've provided. This is all obviously about the competency card and getting the learners the relevant card so that they can ultimately go out and work on construction sites across Wales and England also as well if required. And on the screen there, we've just highlighted the things that learners will need to undertake in order to be successful to get their competency card. So they must successfully complete the 2 online assessments for the level 3, the work-based project, obviously for the level 3, the professional discussion, the employee confirmation guide, and obviously complete their CITB health and safety environment test for CSCS or their CPS can. So just to highlight, obviously at the end of the program, when learners have successfully completed the core and the level 3, they are, and all elements of them both, or the elements that they may be exempt from, then they can apply for their card. And there's a link on the screen there which showcases the CSCS website. And also in the table there, we just wanted to highlight the qualification title, the level in which it is currently at, the colour of the card, and who is issuing it for construction. For the apprenticeships that we've highlighted, it will be CSCS and CPS for the plant operation. So we just wanted to highlight that for you guys and share with you the link to the CSCS website. We've got time now for some questions. We've got sort of half a dozen to 7 questions ourselves, which we are going to go through. But we can take your questions as well, so please feel free to put them in the chat. I am going to cover the next round of questions whilst people are typing questions in the chat, just to give you a bit of time. So we've just put on a small range of questions where we think we could cover some bases. So does the employer have to be a qualified assessor? Absolutely no. They are not assessing the learner as proficient and not making any assessment decisions or judgments. They are just signing off to say that the learner is consistently working at industry standards. So they're not making any judgments essentially on that. Do we have to check if the employer is qualified? There's no requirement to do that, but ultimately as part of your vetting process or whatever, whatever you want to apply is essentially up to you guys as centres. But for the purpose of this, there is no requirement to check that the employer is qualified. There is no MVQs now within the new suite of construction qualifications. It's imperative that we certainly highlight that, because there has been a lot of confusion around the MVQs. The MVQs aren't going away, so they will still be there for essentially adult learners, etc. Apologies, but they do not form part of the new level 3 qualification or apprenticeship framework. How much evidence is needed? Always a critical question. So on page 4 of the employee confirmation guide, that outlines all of the evidence requirements. So we are very cautious that we do not want to call it a portfolio of evidence. We're calling it documented evidence, because this isn't an MVQ style assessment model. So if you go to page 4 of the employee confirmation guide, it outlines all of the evidence requirements, and I think it typically says something like typically 15 pieces of evidence. Is the employer sign-off part of the qualification? No, the employee confirmation guide is not part of the qualification as it is as a level 3. But this is to allow the employee confirmation guide essentially allows the learner to attain their competency guard once they have completed. Is the evidence IQA'd? So working in collaboration with your employer, the IQA will check that there's sufficient evidence. They're not second assessing it at all, but they just checking that the evidence is sufficient and it's evident to allow the learner to proceed to their final assessment. And when can evidence gathering commence? So compiling the the apprentice's portfolio, I know we shouldn't call it a portfolio, but there it is, should only start once the employer is satisfied that the apprentice is consistently working at or above the criteria set out in the occupational competency statements in the employee confirmation guide. I would highlight though that please don't miss an opportunity to gather any good solid evidence that you can. So please bear that in mind when you are collating and gathering the evidence for the employee confirmation guide. Not to miss an opportunity is imperative, really. So that's sort of half a dozen to 7 questions that we've posed, and there's been some in the questions tab, so I'm going to try and cover them. I'm going to cover some straight off. We're not covering BSE for this webinar, so for the purpose of that, unfortunately, you would need to speak to EAL. Unfortunately, I can't help you with regard to JIB cards. It's not my area of expertise. Neither is the 6035 and any APL, RPL from any BSE qualification. So I do apologise for that, but I would advise apologies, that you contact EAL, and for any APL, RPL from our current City and Guilds qualifications, you can contact David Pye, who is our BSE technical advisor. So I do apologise that I can't answer those questions, but unfortunately we're not covering BSE. Some of the other ones, what is in place for learners who are getting direct entry but has not completed a level 2? Learners essentially don't have to complete the level 2 prior to the level 3. The level 3 also has the core attached to the framework now, so learners can ultimately start the apprenticeship at level 3 as direct entry. They just have obviously a longer duration of apprenticeship. With regards to RPL, from the current diploma qualifications, there is some guidance on the website, some mapping grids that we've showcased to show that what a learner will need to complete if they have previously completed a diploma. So then their mapping grids are now on the website, so you should be able to access those. How long do students have to complete the new level 3? We are very cautious. We don't set the duration of apprenticeships, but in the previous webinars we delivered when we were introducing you to these, we did showcase a sort of a timestamp, if you like, of a typical duration, but ultimately the duration of any apprenticeship is always agreed between yourself as the employer and the provider. But what I will do is I will add that slide to this slide deck, so that when it is shared with you guys following today's webinar, it'll be in there. So it'll give you a bit of a guide of what we would expect a typical learner to do with regards to durations, and it also showcases the typical durations if a learner has done the progression and foundation as well. So who ultimately signs off the learner as competent? Previously, the assessor makes that decision based on their knowledge of the criteria and experience in the trade. Are we relying on the employer to be able to assess the learner and deem them competent? No, the employer is not assessing the learner. Apologies. Your on-site assessors will still, work with the learner and the employer to collate the evidence that's required for the employee confirmation guide against the occupational competency statements. And when the learners do the practical project, ultimately it will be your centre's on-site assessors who will be conducting those assessments and marking the learners accordingly. And again, there's guidance in the assessment pack on that. The final decision is made by City and Guilds. So once the learner has completed the knowledge test, they've completed the core qualification, and they have completed the practical project as part of the level 3, then they will be submitted for their professional discussion, which is conducted by City and Guilds. And following that, and following all of the quality assurance processes, City and Guilds will then issue the final grade for that learner. So ultimately, it's more of a party sign-off now with regards to the employer, yourselves as providers, but also City and Guilds as an award and assessment organisation. So I hope that answers your question. So it's more of a well-rounded assessment approach with these qualifications, and that's why they are so fantastic, to be honest. The way they should be, a triangled approach between the award and assessment organisation, you guys as providers, and ultimately the employer. So thank you for that question. I'm just trying to cover some more. Can you get the occupational competency statements? Yes, so the occupational competency statements are all, apologies, are all contained in the employer confirmation guides. So you can find them all on the employer confirmation guides, which are on the Skills for Wales website under the specific trades. Can you explain where the map and documents are, please? What we'll do is we'll try and get a link to the documents, and we'll share that as part of the follow-up email with this presentation webinar, because I don't know how to navigate the website off the top of my head, and I don't want to start dropping off this screen and sharing others, because we know how delicate technology can be sometimes. But what we'll certainly do is share with you a link to those documents so you can access them, and we'll put those links in the follow-up email which you'll get after this webinar today. So hopefully that's helpful for you. Are the essential skills A on and comms still at level 2? Apologies, I'm not 100% sure on that because we're not covering the level 3 framework today. We are just covering, sorry, we're not covering the apprenticeship framework, but we are just covering the level 3 qualification. But what I will do is I will take that question away if you don't mind, and I will ask QW, because I am at an event with them on Thursday at Cardiff and Vale College with all of your construction heads. So I will certainly ask that question if that's okay, and I will come back to you again. We'll cover that in the follow-up email as well, if that's okay. Apologies, I don't know the answer to that at the minute. I hope you found the webinar useful today, and thank you very much for your questions. What time is allocated to training at level 3, and what needs to be covered in year 1, year 2, year 3? So essentially, that is up to you how you want to plan your curriculum and how you want to plan delivery. So we've provided you with the curriculum planners, which are all online, and ultimately it's up to you with regards to what you cover with regards to year 1, year 2, year 3. The qualification handbooks on there, we would not be stipulating that you need to cover certain aspects of say site carpentry, for instance. We wouldn't be stipulating that you need to do structural carpentry first before you do, say, second fix or first fix. However you want to sequence your delivery is entirely up to you. With regards to how much time is allocated to that, again, we cannot stipulate. There's JLH aligned with this qualification, which is in the handbook, and you apply sufficient hours for the learners to be trained and developed, and obviously complete the core and the level 3 if they haven't already done the foundation. So you need to bear that in mind as well. So again, you have the delivery planners on the website. Hopefully you'll find them useful, but we would not be able to stipulate how many hours or what needs to be covered in year 1, year 2, year 3. As professional deliverers, you would ultimately decide that with regards to how you're going to sequence it, because you know the external influences within your centre that could impact on that, such as workshop times and timetabling, etc. So hopefully that answers your question. Probably not the answer you want, but yeah, it does answer it. You mentioned the APL grade 4 learners who have completed diploma. Yes, so we will find the map and grids, and we will share the link, and we'll try and get the link in the PowerPoint as well for future presentations. So thank you for that. We will certainly try and do that. What is the minimum percentage of JLH you'll be expected to deliver at the centre? Again, we can't get into the politics of how much JLH is delivered within centres, but the JLH is there as a guide. Please utilise it as a guide, because if timetables and time in college is massively reduced, the only person that's suffering essentially is the learner. So there's no sort of minimum percentage of JLH that will be expected to be delivered. The JLH is there as a guide, and we'd expect that sufficient time is allocated to both in-college delivery and on-site assessment to allow that learner to efficiently develop their skills and knowledge in their chosen trade, and ultimately prepare them for assessment, getting them ready for vocational competency. So it's all about the learner, and we wouldn't be able to police or determine what is the minimum percentage of JLH. Apologies. So the assessor's role is to assess work on site for compliance with the competency standards. Yes, it is. So the assessor's role is to assess the work on site. They will assess the learner evidence that they produce as well against their employee confirmation guide, and then ultimately the assessor will also conduct the practical project in the workplace as well, and they will assess that on site as well. So it's kind of a dual role now for the assessors. You've got the sort of the on program, if you like, formative assessment ongoing against the employee confirmation guide, and then they will ultimately, or a member of staff will ultimately conduct the assessment as part of the practical project.
Jason, I was just gonna say, obviously, give you a minute's break and probably get yourself some water, taking on all these qualifications. I was going to say, obviously, there have been a number of questions around RPL mapping. So if somebody's got a previous level 2 qualification or they've completed a level 3, how do these get mapped into the various disciplines? Now, looking on the Skills for Wales website, I'm pretty sure electrotechnical and plumbing have been done, so that's the BSc. Where are you with some of the for the on-site construction stuff? Has that been done, or are you guys looking to adapt that over the course of the next kind of few weeks?
The mapping grids have been, the RPL mapping documents have been completed. If they're not on the website already, they're imminently going up on the website.
Okay.
We were informed
Okay,
that they were completed some while ago. They had to be translated, which often puts a delay on it, but I'm certainly going to be following that up following today's webinar. And as previously asked by somebody else, I'll add them to the presentation and ask that they are submitted as well as part of the follow-up email.
Brilliant. Yeah, okay. I mean, then we can also send out an alert to all our channel partners within Wales, just to let them know that the website has now will now be hosting those progression RPL documents where they can find them under Centre Documents under the relevant specialism. So yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, there was another question there on logbooks. The employer confirmation guide is essentially the logbook. So that is essentially what you need. With regards to your evidence documents, you can create them yourself. We gave some guides and exemplars in the presentation today. And will these be on Smart Assessor? Whichever e-portfolio platform you use, I'm assuming that the employee confirmation guides can be added to that. But ultimately as well, you know, it's imperative that it covers it as it's shown in the employee confirmation guide book. So it can't be adapted for an e-portfolio system, just to bear that in mind. Nothing can be reworded or changed with regards to how it's structured and how it's put together essentially as occupational competency statements. So just bear that in mind. And again, I think you've highlighted there that you're a plumbing and heating assessor. You probably want to be speaking to EAL because ultimately they cover the level, the BSc level 3. I can't see any more questions coming through.
No, they seem to have dried up. And I think you've done a great job with covering a lot of these questions. Obviously, with your unfortunate hay fever, but if there are any more questions, we're still on here for a few minutes longer, and we'll try and answer them as best we can. Alternatively, you can also send in your queries into the email address that you're seeing on your screen at the moment. And obviously those will be picked up immediately and we'll get back to you with the answers hopefully that you're looking for as well.
We have one more question. Is there a practical to be done on foundation or just the core knowledge? No, the learner would still need to do the practical assessment as part of the core qualification, which essentially is the same as the foundation. So they would have to do all assessment components for both the core qualification and the level 3, which was highlighted earlier in the slides. It just, you know, listed the number of assessments that would needed to be taken. So yes, the learner would need to do all assessments that's contained within the core and the level 3. I hope that helps. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be any more questions coming in. I don't want to sort of keep anybody any longer than we have to. Just as a couple of thank yous really. Thank you to everyone for attending today. Thank you for your questions and your pointers and prompts. We certainly will try and get back and cover all the parts that's been asked today. So thank you very much for that. Thank you to you, Salim, as well.
Oh no worries, Jason. I hardly did anything. You did all the hard work here, and appreciate you driving this presentation after suffering with hay fever today. But I would just like to thank you all again for your patience, for your input around some of the questions that you've posed. I think a key takeaway for Jason and I is to look at the RPO and the mapping documents, particularly around the construction specialisms, and hopefully we'll upload those onto the website as soon as we can, and we'll send an alert to you guys as well.
Thank you very much, Celine. I'm just going to cover one last bit. Do we as tutors get to go on site to get the evidence? Unless you've got on-site assessors, you know, as tutors, as classroom delivery tutors or workshop delivery tutors, there may not be a need if you have on-site assessors. So hopefully that covers that. Apologies. Yes, thank you all for attending. Thank you again to you, Celine. I hope you all have a great day. I may see some of you on Thursday. Do come and say hello. It's nice to put names to faces, and I will certainly see you sometime in the next academic year. In the meantime, I hope you all have a restful summer break, a well-deserved summer break, ready to get going for September. So thank you very much, everybody, again. I hope you all stay safe.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.